In a strong economy, obviously in a resource-based province, you have to move oil, you have to move gas, in your case, liquefy natural gas. How is that all going to work at this point?
It's coming along pretty quickly. I mean, we've got, billions and billions of dollars of investment now on the table. So in the Northeast, we have a surplus supply. We have probably the biggest gas fields in the world in the Northeast of British Columbia. We need to extract more of it, put it in pipelines, which is safe to do because unlike oil, if there's a leak, it just goes into the air. I mean, you don't want a leak, but it's safer than oil. Take it to the coast, liquefy it in places like Kitimat and Prince Rupert, freeze it when you liquefy it, put it on a ship, send it to Asia. You could get 5 times the price for it in Asia.
And how is it extracted? Originally,
we do it through a process called fracking, and it's controversial. There's some movies that are made in the States
Very
about
much
this.
so, Gasland, movies like that. Hydraulic fracking is controversial, no question. And most of us don't know much about it. How do they actually do it? If you believe some, they're going to wreck all the wells and wreck all the water. If you believe others, they say, no, no, no. It's high tech, it's sophisticated, we can do this safely, and we don't want the province or the oil companies to leave millions on the table because we need to export this to China, India, Korea.
And not just make money, but also wean them off thermal coal that they're using, and diesel power. We are exporting the cleanest fossil fuel known on the planet to get them, to transition them to better sources. But we do it differently here than they do in the States. So we drill down a mile, way under the water table, so there's no risk to the water table. We encase it in concrete, and people come from in a very seismically stable area. We have never had a problem in British Columbia, and people come from all over the world to see what we've been doing, which we've been doing for 50 years.
And how assured are you that there indeed is a market? Because remember what happened with coal in Japan, like many years ago when the Japanese said they wanted our coal. We built the coal ports, and it lasted a little while and went away. So with the LNG, how do we know we have a market? And what kind of money it's going to bring in? Because it's so competitive and you need skilled labor and all of that too.
It's true. But those are decisions the private sector needs to make. I mean, they're the ones that are going to be gambling the billions of dollars in investment. So Petronas, not something everybody's heard about here.
Right.
They provide 45%, half of the government's budget in Malaysia. That's how big they are. They're a top 20 Fortune 500 company. Shell, Exxon, they're making billions of dollars in investment in British Columbia because they believe there's a market. Shouldn't be for me to decide. I'm only in the government. It should be for the private sector.
Okay, I want you to take a look at Professor Mark Jackert. I know you have met him. He's an environmental economist, wrote a book on sustainable fossil fuels. Here's his take on LNG. Tell me what you think.
What she was doing was calculating the difference between the price that a producer can get for natural gas in Canada today, in Western Canada, with the cost of natural gas in China when delivered. Well, there's an extreme differential right now, and we know how markets work. They're going to come together on that. The Chinese are going to start doing their own fracking of natural gas. There's going to be other people trying to trade there. So I'm not saying that we won't build one LNG plant but I don't think it'll make the kind of revenues that she thinks it'll make, to pay off the debt of British Columbia over time.
Right. And the she is you, obviously. 18 billion, big number. How will we make that much money?
Well, I mean, again, Mark Jackert is a very, very smart man, but not in the private sector. And people in the private sector are making these gambles on British Columbia because they believe the profit will be there for them. So, I mean, we can't predict what the market will be. He's right. There are other economies that are getting into this business. That's why we're in a bit of a rush to get it done, frankly, so we can get there before everybody else. But the other thing he didn't mention, China and India have the fastest growing middle class in the history of humanity. They need power. They have an almost inexhaustible appetite for that. They want clean power. This is where it's going to come from. So that growth in that usage is going to keep the demand is going to keep the price, I think, higher than he may predict.
And as we all know, in a resource-based province, when the money comes in, we build schools and hospitals and roads, and it makes us thrive. But we're also very concerned about our air, our water, our land, no question.
That's right. But that's the great thing about natural gas, is that it is the cleanest fossil fuel. It's environmentally very safe to move. That's why First Nations, almost all of them, are on side for what we're doing with this. That's why communities are supporting it. You haven't seen the kind of opposition for this that you've seen for Alberta's heavy oil, precisely because it's a much more environmentally sound product.
Yes, I understand. Skilled labor, you need skilled laborers to do it. Are we training them now? Will we have enough? How's that going to work?
That is the biggest question that we have in front of us. And sitting down with these companies, they say, look, we do not want to see the labor cost inflation in British Columbia that we saw in Australia, which has really hurt their business there. And it's not just natural gas, it's mining, it's agriculture, you name it. They all need these folks. So Shirley Bond, who's our Minister of Jobs, is coordinating all the ministers who are involved in education to build a seamless process to get people into the workforce in jobs that actually exist. Because right now, we train people for jobs that don't exist. Rather than, we should be redeploying that money so that we can help people get into businesses where they can find a
lack
job.
of blue-collar workers, from a bricklayer to a plumber. What about in the schools? How about putting more of that in the schools today?
Yeah.
I know you're not running all the schools, but good idea?
Yes. Push it, start getting kids in grade 10 thinking about the trades or the arts, which is another area of real growth, because you think about tech and their need for people with arts inclination and degree. Many of those kids don't even bother to graduate because they get to grade 11 and grade 12, they go, boy, none of this stuff interests me. Give them a trade. Let them know that by the time they get to grade 12, they could be so close to job ready that they could buy a house and start their life within a few years of graduating. That's incentive, and it's good for the economy.
Yes, well, and I don't know about you, but the last time I was in Palm Desert or Palm Springs, it wasn't necessarily the white-collar people that had the fancy houses. It was some of the blue-collar workers.
And young people need to know. We have to change our culture as parents, too. We tell our kids, well, gee, I want you to go and become a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant. Those are kind of the three jobs. Well, what about becoming, working in somebody who's a carpenter? What about becoming a pipe fitter?
Sure.
Those are great jobs.
Or becoming a premier.
Or becoming a premier.
Why not?
When I ask parents how many of them want their kids to become politicians, none of them put up their hands.
Well, I saw
and I blame the media for that.
Really? Why? I don't understand that, but we'll come back and talk about it. We'll return with BC Premier Christy Clark.